we go. Okay. So let me officially welcome you to our August meeting of the League of Women Voters, Kansas City, Jackson, Clay, and Platte counties. Thank you so much for coming. I would like to just right off the bat, go ahead and start by introducing our first speaker. We have two speakers today. Our first speaker is Jen Bernstein. She's the advocacy manager for National Council of Jewish Women in St. Louis. And she has a master's in social work from the Brown School at Washington University, got her undergraduate degree from George Washington University, and she grew up in Denver, and her family moved to St. Louis the summer before her senior year in high school. Oh, that's a bummer to have to start all over. Sorry about that. She and her husband, Scott, have one son, Ari, who will be starting high school in a couple of weeks, and they have a house full of rescue pets when she is not trying to fight the uphill battles in Missouri. Jen likes to go to concerts and Ari's hockey games, and she likes to needlepoint. So thank you so much, Jen.
You're welcome.
And I'm going to spotlight you, and you can share your screen if you have some slides that you'd like
I don't have any slides today. And I do apologize that my hair is still a little wet. So sorry if I'm looking a little not quite there yet, but um, we actually just got back from being out of town. So I'm really glad to jump right into this and very happy to be here. So thank you so much for having me. I think I see a lot of familiar faces that I see on the Monday Missouri Voter Protection Coalition's call. So it's really nice to see all of you. Nancy Price, I know I recognize your name and see you a lot. Hope everyone can join those calls too. They're so valuable with Denise Lieberman, who's just a powerhouse and is remarkable, and one of our National Council of Jewish Women members. So we're always excited to work with her. And I'm always excited to work with the League of Women Voters. NCJW has been a longtime coalition partner with you all here in St. Louis. So we just love working with you as well. So I think I'm kind of tasked to talk about the state of abortion in Missouri since the fall of Roe and kind of what goes on legislatively and with just the general public and how it's been. For those who may not know, abortion has really, for all intents and purposes, been illegal in Missouri even before the fall of Roe. There was a 3-day waiting period, a 72-hour waiting period. There was only one abortion clinic in Missouri, and that was here in St. Louis in the Central West End. So let's say you lived in Joplin and you work a minimum wage job that you don't have paid time off for, and you needed to get an abortion. Well, you would have to come up here and do an ultrasound and get attacked by crisis pregnancy centers who are going to try to convince you that they are the way to go, even though they're going to give you false medical information and tell you that you're an evil person for getting an abortion or even thinking about getting an abortion, and deal with all of those hoops. And then you have to wait 72 hours to get the procedure. And the people at Planned Parenthood themselves had to give you incorrect medical information, even though that's the last thing they wanted to do. So really, it was very, very difficult to get an abortion in Missouri, even before the fall of Roe. And once the Dobbs decision happened, Missouri was the first state in the country to immediately make it illegal. We had a trigger law that was passed, I believe, in 2019 during that legislative session, which, if the fall of Roe would happen, immediately abortion would be rendered illegal in Missouri. And that is indeed, unfortunately, what happened. We're lucky because, at least in St. Louis and Kansas City, I know that Kansas has clinics across the border. And in St. Louis, we have 2 clinics that are literally 20 minutes away from downtown St. Louis. We have a Planned Parenthood and Hope Clinic. Hope Clinic is an independent abortion clinic. And so they have really stepped up. Planned Parenthood decided to do this, and I'm blanking on the name. It's like they made like a Midwest Access Center is basically kind of what they did, because they kind of saw what was coming. And also people in Missouri were starting to go to Illinois just because it was so much easier. And you didn't have to jump through all the hoops. Illinois doesn't have those laws. So why not just take an extra 30 minutes if you can, if you have the means to, travel there and not have to deal with all this crap. So that's been going on for a long time, but they've really had to step up now because all of the other states that have now made abortion illegal, like Texas, like Oklahoma, Arkansas, they have seen an influx of patients coming from states far and wide that they had never seen before. So they have been inundated with patients seeking abortion care. We have been working with them on a community service project to provide, I mean, because we feel like what can we do? I mean, a lot of our members, we're a membership organization. A lot of our members are older. They don't, they're not maybe the type of people who are going to go be a clinic escort or go and, go to a million protests. They want to do something hands-on though. So a lot of people have donated to the Abortion Access Fund, and I highly recommend looking into the Missouri Abortion Access Fund. They do such tremendous work. That's something you can do if you aren't the type to go and be a clinic escort, regardless of your age. I'm not either necessarily. Or if you're not the type who, is going to go protest, and which is perfectly fine. Donating to the Missouri Abortion Action Fund is a wonderful thing to do. We partnered with the two clinics in just providing care items for patients. They're traveling from long distances and they might need a change of clothes. So we provide sweatpants and a sweatshirt and a t-shirt for patients, just so they can be comfortable. Post-abortion pads and other items, snacks. A lot of them will bring their own children with them. So diapers, baby formula. We have a room in one of the clinics where they have like coloring books and stuff like that. Shampoo, deodorant, other personal care items. So, it's not much, but it's something. People just, really, really wanted to do something. So that's kind of like the boots on the ground that we've done since the Dobbs decision. We are also a part of, and I don't know if the person from the ACLU is probably going to do a better job talking about this, but NCJW was kind of instrumental behind the scenes when the religious discrimination lawsuit was filed. So I don't know if everyone here is aware, but and these legislators were actually caught on video saying, yes, thank you, Nancy. The Planned Parenthood Clinic is in Fairview Heights, and it's the Reproductive Health Center. And then Hope Clinic is in Granite City, Illinois. So both wonderful organizations, and we've loved working with the both of them. So some of you may are familiar with the lawsuit that was filed a few months ago by religious leaders and clergy members. So we have on video, not several, but a couple of legislators explicitly saying that the reason that they voted for these trigger laws to ban abortions in Missouri is due to their religious convictions. So they said, because I am a practicing Catholic or I am a practicing Christian, I do not believe abortion should be legal. And that violates the Establishment Clause of the U.S. Constitution, because you are not allowed to impose one religious belief over another. And in Judaism, for example, and this is just one example of many, there are many streams of Christianity that also believe something similar. In Judaism, we do not believe that a soul enters the body, let's say, until that person is born. We do not believe that a person is a person until they are born. Also, we believe that the mother's or the pregnant person's life is paramount. So let's say whether it's a physical health issue or a mental health issue. In Judaism, we believe that the pregnant person's life is paramount. So if they are struggling, whether it's physically or mentally, and they feel that an abortion is the right thing to do, then that is their prerogative under Jewish law. And this goes with all streams of Judaism. Even Orthodox Jews believe this to some extent. A majority of us, are what's called Reform or conservative Jews, who are more in the movement, but even Orthodox Jews will have a similar viewpoint. And that's why in Israel, abortion is legal. So it's really a violation of my religious freedom that abortion is illegal in Missouri. So it's been a really interesting kind of situation. They're trying to put stops to this lawsuit. They're trying the best they can, but it's continuing to move forward. Of course, we all know the wheels of justice turn very slowly, and it's still ongoing, but we will see what happens. So it's been very interesting. We are not an actual plaintiff because we are not clergy, but there are several Jewish clergy members. There's Maharat Rory Picker-Nice, who is the head of the Jewish Community Relations Council, and she is actually an Orthodox female clergy member. And then there are several Reform and conservative rabbis. And this is conservative with a lower C, not like it's kind of a between Reform, and it's not conservative politically, is what I'm trying to say for those who are not familiar. So yeah, so any law based on religion, as Jim says, any law based on religion violates someone's religion. That is true, and it violates the U.S. Constitution. And believe it or not, the Missouri Constitution is actually stronger than the U.S. Constitution when it comes to the Establishment Clause. So really, on paper, this is an easy thing, but it's Missouri, so there you go.
Thank you, Jen. I know we're going to have
Welcome.
a lot of questions. So I'm going to introduce our next speaker, and then at the end, I know I have a couple of questions for you. So
Absolutely.
thank you very much.
welcome.
I want to introduce our next speaker, Tony Rothert. Am I pronouncing that correctly? Okay, excellent.
Remarkably well, yes.
Okay, Tony Rothert is the Director of Integrated Advocacy at the ACLU of Missouri. He holds a Juris Doctorate, Masters of Social Work, and a Bachelor's of Arts degree from St. Louis University. He oversees ACLU Missouri's legal advocacy and litigation efforts on civil liberties issues. And, this is one. So Tony, I'm going to spotlight you, and you can share your screen if you have any slides or anything.
I'm not together enough to have slides, but thank you for thinking I might be. And I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you all. Usually our work with the League has been in voting areas where we've had several successful partnerships at challenging some Missouri laws and regulations, and that's always been fun. But yes, here we are on this issue, and Jen covered a lot of it. The 2019 trigger law, before Dobbs, we were able to stop a lot of it from going into effect. One part that we were not able to stop from going into effect was a mandatory pelvic exam that was unnecessary for almost all abortions. So in reality, at Planned Parenthood in St. Louis, there was a move toward sending people to Illinois even before Dobbs came down, and a real investment. That organization has invested, interestingly, a lot of money into this Illinois clinic, and really was ahead of the times, ahead of Dobbs, in setting that up so that would be ready there as a resource for the whole Midwest, if needed. And like Jen said, it's actually even closer. I live in Illinois. I work in Missouri for civil liberties, and I live in Illinois, relatively the land of civil liberties, relatively speaking. It has its own problems, but so one day I drove from Planned Parenthood to the Hope Clinic, and it took 13 minutes. So it's an extra 13-minute drive, which I know it's a challenge for people to get to St. Louis from much of the state, but once you're here, it's only 13 more minutes. Because of the 2019 trigger law and our very ambitious Attorney General and Governor, we were the first in Missouri to completely ban abortion. This has had, there is trouble for people who are in emergency situations and can't leave the state. There are people in prison who are pregnant. We spoke to one last week, and there's nothing nothing that can be done. And also people in foster care will have, which are some of the hardest. We worked with people doing judicial bypasses for minors who couldn't get parental consent, often because they were in foster care, could not get parental consent to have an abortion. And you know, the toughest, I mean, the people were in tough situations, and those situations are tougher now, because there's just no recourse unless someone wants to risk a severe liability by helping a foster child get out of state, and probably risk criminal prosecution. So so even though a lot of people are able to leave the state, it really is intolerable, the situation that we have here. And the religious freedom lawsuit, or religious, it's really separation of church and state. I don't want to get too nerdy or boring here, but there are two parts to the Establishment Clause in the Missouri Constitution and in the U.S. Constitution. This case is brought into the Missouri Constitution. There's the church, the state can't pick a religion part, and there's the religious liberty and freedom piece, that we have an individual right as individuals to make our religious choices and practices we see fit. And there was some nervousness, a lot of planning went into this litigation, because that religious liberty part has been used as an excuse in recent years to try to discriminate, to give people the right to not make cakes, not help at weddings, but also, you know, to outright discriminate, especially against transgender individuals, but also LGBT individuals. So this case focuses only on the other piece. It's the establishment part, not letting the government pick sides in religion. And as Jen said, you know, on paper, the reason this case is still alive and still going is because on paper it's correct. It'll take a long time, I think, to get to the Missouri Supreme Court and get a final decision, and the legislature could probably fix it by going in and lying about their motives and repassing the same law. But it's important to do first, because the law as it is does violate the Constitution. It's a good enough reason, but also changes the conversation, I think. People of religious faith, certain religious faiths have hijacked the idea that if you're at all religious, that you have to be against abortion, and that's just not true. It's not even true in some of the religions that are most famously anti-abortion. So hearing those voices, one of the best things, I guess, the silver linings that have come out of Dobbs is that more people have told their stories of abortion, and more especially religious folks have come out and said, hey, this isn't just a one-size-fits-all religious issue. And that way it reminds me of the movement towards marriage equality, when people started coming out, telling their stories, and then religious leaders also stood up. And so that makes me hopeful in the long run that we can start changing the conversation society-wise. But I wanted to talk today a little bit about the effort to petition petition to put a measure on the Missouri ballot in 2024 to create a constitutional amendment to reproductive freedom. There's a group called Missourians for Constitutional Freedom that submitted 11 proposed constitutional amendments to the Secretary of State for possible inclusion on next year's ballot. There's no way 11 would appear, but it's common in Missouri for proponents of a measure to have on more than one version, see how it comes out, do some polling, and decide which one to move forward on. So this year there were at least about a dozen voting reform initiatives proposed, several around minimum wage, increasing the minimum wage, and healthy lives initiatives. So there are, this was a very normal thing. And we've been involved at the ACLU in the ballot language phase of cases previously. We've somehow were able to defeat efforts to put a constitutional amendment against affirmative action on the ballot. Missouri they tried several times. Missouri was one of the few states that was able to defeat that effort again and again until recently the Supreme Court gave anti-affirmative action folks the nationwide win that they wanted, but we put it off in Missouri for a long time. The other piece that we were able to keep off the ballot a few times was voter ID. And so we've been on the side of trying to slow things down when there have been measures we didn't like. So although I'm decrying people for doing that daily now, it is part of the game in Missouri. So we knew that was coming. We knew that there would be, that John Ashcroft as Secretary of State gets to take the first stab at the language that would appear on the ballot. We knew it would be terrible. We didn't quite know how terrible, but we knew it would be terrible and we'd have to challenge it. What we did not expect, well, I told everyone there'll be some shenanigans. I said it. I knew it, but we didn't quite imagine how bad it would be. So what we did, the way it works is when you submit an initiative petition, they come up with the language that's going to appear on the ballot, and that appears on the petitions that people sign too. So you aren't supposed to, the law says you're not supposed to gather petition signatures. They don't count unless they're on a petition that has the official ballot language that's going to be on the ballot. So it can take up to 52 days to go through the whole process of coming up with a ballot title. And there are two parts to it: a summary statement, which the Secretary of State writes, and that's usually where the controversy is, and a fiscal note summary, where the auditor estimates what it's going to cost state and local governments if the measure passes, cost or save. And it's generally a routine process, and then we go court and fight. This time, the Attorney General injected himself into the fiscal note process. These are all very anti-abortion, right-wing politicians in these offices, but the auditor has some integrity and wrote a fiscal note that I think is wrong, but he estimated the cost would be $52,000 a year to state and local governments. We think that's wrong because it's based on lost tax revenue from abortions, from people who are never born. But it doesn't include the abortions that already happen out of state and the fact that they happen anyhow. It doesn't include, it was based on one county. That's the controversy. Only one county suggested there was any cost. None of the other local governments saw any cost or savings. So it doesn't count. Interestingly, they don't count the people that aren't born because of birth control. They don't count, but they also don't count the savings from not having to educate these people or provide services to them or provide roads to them, these imaginary people that they're worried about not being able to tax. But that said, we can live with a fiscal note that says it would cost $50,000 a year. That's not going to change how people vote. What the opponents wanted was to say that it would cost $51 billion a year, and the Attorney General was championing that. I think of, I don't know if anyone remembers the Austin Powers movies, but there was a Dr. Evil who would talk about billions of dollars. And that's what I think of every time I hear Andrew Bailey talking about $51 billion. It seems like a made up number, and it really is. And we know that if that is what the ballot said, we would lose. if voters have to say, do you want to adopt a right to reproductive freedom, and it would cost $51 billion, voters are going to vote no. Just how it is. So the AG failed, and we won at the Missouri Supreme Court, and he abused his power. Hooray. Glad to win, but he cost 100 days. Got muted there. He cost there. Am I back?
Yep, you're back.
Okay. It cost 100 days, and that's valuable signature collection time. In Missouri, you want to begin collecting signatures as close to Labor Day-ish as you can, so you get some signatures collected before winter comes. We're in court now, challenging the summary statement, as we knew we always would. Fortunately, I think for us, the Secretary Ashcroft went overboard. He says, do you want to amend the Constitution to allow unregulated, dangerous abortion with no restrictions from until birth? Which is not an accurate description, and uses argumentative language, which you're not supposed to use. So we feel somewhat confident that we will get new language in early September. And we, amongst us, I mean, I know this is recorded and other people might see it, so it's not too secret, but amongst us, there's still time. There's still time for these measures to move forward. But there is a decided effort to try to prevent it from getting to voters. And the league has filed an amicus brief in support of our summary statement case, making that point that this is really an unprecedented effort to slow things down. And just to give you an example, after we won our case at the Missouri Supreme Court, and they said, "Oh, you have to give these folks their ballot language." The Secretary of State gets 3 days to do that, and every Secretary of State, including this one, has always interpreted that as 3 days. So he got it on a Thursday. Every Secretary of State has said, well, he got that means Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Saturday's the weekend, so we do it on Monday. They're so petty that they said, well, Thursday, we got it on Thursday. Thursday doesn't count. So we're going to count Friday, and then we're not counting Saturday or Sunday because they're the weekend. And so we're going to count Monday and Tuesday, and we'll do it on Wednesday. So, anything they could do, even to cause an extra 3 days delay, our elected officials are doing on this. There's also was an effort in the legislature to change, and I'm sure you're all aware of this, to change the threshold that it takes to pass a constitutional amendment. This might have been great back when we were passing constitutional amendments to make English our official language and to ban same-sex couples from getting married. But now that progressive people are using the initiative process, the legislature is trying to break it so that it doesn't work. And Florida, other states have tried to raise the threshold to 60% that you would need, 60% vote to amend the Constitution, and Florida, in fact, has done that. Famously, Ohio tried, and it was tied to abortion, and this week, and it failed. People don't like their rights being taken away. And there's a very wealthy man in Missouri who believes in the right to initiative, and said that he would fund a campaign against it if it was 60%. So the legislature was, I think they settled on the bill that almost passed to put it on the ballot. They settled on 57%. And that number, it's not a coincidence that marijuana legalization had got 56%. There are certain things. It's not only about abortion, it's about other things that have passed in recent years that they don't like. But it is about abortion right now. So that also could come up next year. I was listening to a podcast that was talking about how different states and state officials and politicians are dealing with the issue of abortion, since it has harmed. I mean, we're nonpartisan, you're nonpartisan, but it has harmed one party more than the other. Let's just be honest. Dobbs, the reaction to Dobbs, and they said Missouri seems to be taking the Ohio approach, and I think that's certainly true. So that's why I was happy to see what happened in Ohio. If they put a constitutional amendment on the ballot to increase the threshold, that would probably go on the ballot next August. And then the reproductive freedom measure, if it moves forward, I'll talk about that for a second in a minute, would probably be on the November ballot. So there would be two contests in a row, two campaigns happening simultaneously. One to protect the right to direct democracy more generally in August, and then the right to abortion itself in November. So this is going to be an all hands on deck moment for democracy, and there's a lot of public education to do. People are with us, however, and that is the strong point. Whether or not we have to get whether or not a reproductive freedom measure will move forward is going to depend on polling. It's going to take a lot less than we thought, but millions of dollars just to collect signatures, in addition to volunteers and millions of dollars. And so to get the investment, you need the polling. And to get the polling, we need to know what people are going to see on the ballot, because that's what most people are going to see, the language that's on the ballot. And I will again be honest and tell you that if the Secretary of State's language stays on the ballot of supporting unregulated abortion till birth, we will lose. Even though that's not what the amendment does, that is what the voters will see, and they will vote no, probably by a lot. So we're hoping to get language that's fair and reasonable, and then the poll testing can happen. And based on the preliminary polls, I mean, it's close. It's close whether there's enough support in Missouri to move forward with a measure. So this could be 2024 could be a real turning point year for Missouri, and it's all premised on people having the right to vote. There is in the case where the league is a plaintiff, there's a voter ID case going to trial in November. And we have potentially this threat to direct democracy on the ballot in August. And then the right to abortion on the ballot in November. So there are a lot of big things happening, and it's going to be, it's going to need everyone's involvement, and it's exciting, but also a little bit terrifying that we are where we are. So I will say nothing else, but if you have questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Oh, we have questions. So let me take the spotlight off of you so that we can all see each other. I'm gonna take the prerogative that is mine as leader of this meeting to ask the first question, which is, you've talked about there's a lawsuit that's going on right now with regard to the petition that you hope to have
Mhm.
out to the voters, and that would be November of 2024, right?
Yes.
So we are a voting rights organization, and a lot of times, and as all nonprofit organizations, we are stretched thin in our resources, both hours and volunteer hours and dollars. And so, but our main focus, our mission is the protection of voting rights and democracy and promotion of voter education. So where can you talk a little bit about where our mission and your mission, both of your organizations, intersect? We actually saw it on Tuesday where that intersection happened in Ohio. We saw it on Tuesday. So can both of you talk a little bit more about that and how
do you want to go
our
first?
activities lead to your activities?
Tony, you can go first.
Okay. Well, I mean, so first of all, the league being a plaintiff in our voting rights litigation about getting people access to the ballot is key. Because if we just sued on behalf of individuals, we could get those individuals the right to vote. But when you have an organizational plaintiff, you can get wider relief for all voters. So that is one way the league is playing a role, just by lending its name and its membership to litigation efforts. When it comes to, I think we most naturally most definitely overflow, or not overflow, overlap in the direct democracy area. The ACLU is also nonpartisan. We'd be fighting for direct democracy even if it were the other way around. And honestly, the statutes that really allowed the delay were created when the Democrats were in charge in the late 90s. So it's not a partisan issue. There's one party, whoever's in power doesn't want the people to be able to overrule them. The whole idea of direct democracy is that it's the people's check against the legislature. And helping people understand that, what's at risk. So there are all these popular constitutional amendments that have been made in recent years, and those are all helpful in helping people understand why it's important. But I think the league understands just direct democracy at its core is what it's what makes state government or states different than the federal government. It's what makes Missouri. We've had this for 120 years. It makes Missouri different from about half the other states that don't allow direct democracy. And it's the one thing that's when our state government becomes tyrannical, this is one of the few checks there are. And it's some of the best policies that have come in Missouri have come from direct democracy. And I think that the league's work in promoting direct democracy, promoting understanding of it, really is beneficial in the community at large.
And I mean, Tony covered 99% of it, but I will add the propensity of the Missouri legislature to try and chip away at anything that comes from a Democrat, from an initiative petition process. We saw it with puppy mills. We saw it with Medicaid expansion. So I feel like this is the last bastion of democracy that we have in this state, and we need to make it as accessible as possible, regardless of the issue.
And the the abortion rights petition won't pass in November at 57 or 60% threshold. And so the league has taken, and particularly our league, but both all of the leagues across the state have taken it on as a priority to protect the 50 plus 1 vote percent threshold for initiative petitions to pass. So that's a real direct link, you know, this first and then this. We have to protect this first so that we can then enshrine abortion protection into the Constitution in Missouri. Okay, and we have some questions from chat, and then I'm going to ask people if they want to raise their hands if they have additional questions. And if I miss your question in chat, please raise your hand too. So exactly what language would you suggest for the November 2024 petition?
It's been interesting, before Tony gets into
Yeah.
the legal, you know, stuff, and you know, it's been interesting in the abortion rights realm, because some of our coalition partners are not happy with maybe a certain gestational limit. And some people feel, well, we got to have something. It's better than nothing. You know, personally, I don't think Roe was enough. And I think a lot of people feel the same way, but you know, it is Missouri. So, you know, it's kind of a balancing act, and it's going to be difficult to get everyone involved because it's not going to be perfect.
Right. And that's for sure true. And each of these are, well, Roe is popular with the people. So I think if there's a campaign, what we will say is that these bring back the promise of Roe, because they go way farther than Roe ever did, but we don't necessarily want to highlight that for everyone. But you know, people have, you know, made investments based on and business decisions based on the current state of things. People have, and you know, it really juggles everything if we bring abortion back to Missouri. But it's still important for the people who do not have access to out of state, and urgent for them. In my view, I'll speak for myself. These amendments, we have to propose language. So we've proposed language for, you know, different versions of language for the different versions. But what's common is that the Secretary of State's language focuses exclusively on abortion, and the amendment itself is about reproductive health care, and specifically names prenatal care, childbirth, miscarriage management, birth control, postpartum care, also abortion care. But you know, we think all of that should be included in the language that's on the ballot, both because it's popular and because it's true that those things are not protected currently in the Missouri Constitution, and there have been bills introduced to attack them. We also, and this is where it's tricky with other people on our side, these measures do allow some regulation, not as much as there would have been before Dobbs, but do allow some regulation of all these rights, including the right to abortion. And it's important that language be in there because Missourians want it. And so, you know, the key differences between the measures, and this goes to the language, is when abortion can be heavily regulated, when whether or not there's a parental involvement piece for minors, and whether we say something about taxpayer funding. And, you know, so there's also a tension about not wanting to leave poor people behind, not wanting to leave minors behind, but also wanting something to pass. We're also looking for language that talks about limiting the government's interference with reproductive health decisions. The Secretary of State focused it very much on allowing these dangerous procedures and having government having no role, but doesn't really say it that way. It's more passive voice. Well, it allows anything. In Missouri, people don't like the government interfering with personal decisions overall. And so that's the line we'd like to see, limits the government from interfering with reproductive health choices.
So is the ballot language something that's evolving, or is it something that's your proposed ballot language is somewhere where we could take a look at?
Yes, well, we've challenged 6 of the I think it's on our website. We've challenged 6 of the summary statements the Secretary of State wrote, and in each of those we proposed alternative ballot language that we believe more accurately describes each initiative.
Okay, so ACLU-mo.org. Okay, excellent. Thank you. Another question from the chat. What about the Missouri lawmakers who filed a lawsuit challenging the estimated cost of several of the ballot measures to restore abortion rights?
So they're taking another stab at challenging that fiscal note summary. That case is getting, they're terrible people, but they are amicable and working in the courthouse at least. So they have agreed to speed up their case, and it will be heard with our case on September 11th. The judge we have already ruled in the earlier case against the Attorney General that we had to bring, already ruled that the fiscal note was done properly and summarized, and we have the same summarized properly. The Supreme Court didn't feel like it needed to reach that issue, but we have the same judge now, so we're fairly confident that that their lawsuit will not be successful. And so I didn't spend many words on it, but they're trying to get the $51 billion back into the summary.
Okay. Another question: what do the polling numbers have to get to so the donors put their money in?
Not sure if I'm allowed to say, but I will anyhow. Basically 55%.
Okay.
You need to see 55%. There's going to be, we would expect a ruthless campaign with lots of graphic ads and graphic language to try to mislead people. And so there needs to be some room to go down. This would be tens of millions of dollars if it went to a campaign. So, and there are lots of states looking for that investment. So there's competition as well. So we have to show that we have a real chance at winning. And I mean, I think I'm probably as big an advocate for anyone as moving forward. I think it's really important to do as soon as possible, but even I recognize that moving forward and losing is worse than not having moved forward at all. If we have
to do it right.
Yeah, if we have to wait till 2026, we wait till 2026. But it's so important to do it now that we hope we can. I hope we can.
So, Jan, I know that some of our members, while we will focus on protecting the 50% threshold for the for ballot measures, but I know that our members also will want to jump in and help. And you put some information in the chat earlier. Would you mind putting it in again about
Sure. It's to donate to the Missouri Abortion Fund. I'll put the website up again. Again, it's a tremendous organization. Another effort that we're participating in is with the Missouri Family Health Council, which is they are in charge of the Title X work in Missouri, and they have an effort to distribute free emergency contraception to anyone who wants it. We've been giving that out of our office. We just recently had our back to school store, which is our biggest community service event, and we gave about 200 of those out at that event. We have them. You can also, there's a QR code that you can scan. Even if you're not, that ship has sailed for me. So, but I got some for my niece who's 21. You know, like if you have someone in your life who might need birth control or emergency contraception, because, you know, the Missouri legislature is not going to stop at abortion. They're going to go after birth control. They're going to go after, you know, anything that they see to control women and people who are able to give birth. So yeah, you know, just do all you can to protect that as well. We've been working the past few years on an effort to it's an annual contraception bill, basically to require insurance companies to provide for uninterrupted birth control access, because, you know, those of us know you might have to go every 3 months to get your prescription filled, and let's say you skip it, well, you got to go back to the OBGYN to get that prescription filled again, and it shouldn't have to be this way. Now that there's over-the-counter birth control, that will help, but it's only one type of birth control, so we want all types of birth control available to people, uninterrupted, you know, an uninterrupted prescription, so they don't have to miss work or school or what have you. And, you know, unintended pregnancies, you know, keep people out of the workforce and out of education opportunities. So those are some things we're working on as well. But I will put the Missouri Abortion Access Fund or Missouri Abortion Fund link up there again.
And Jen touched on this, but the Access Fund it helps people get out of state, helps them get where they need to go now that abortion is not available in Missouri. And there are also some efforts to work on abortion pills by mail. That is, and I'm not sure who's working on that directly, but that is more of a fledgling effort.
Okay, what other questions do we have? Raise your hand if you've got a question. Oh, we're usually such a inquisitive, chatty bunch. I have one more. Do you know of any plans in the legislature to pass legislation that criminalizes assisting people in their quest to go out of state or otherwise obtain the abortion care that they need?
So one of the state reps, I think she's a state senator now, though. Yeah. Mary Elizabeth Coleman, who brought one of the state reps who's suing over the fiscal note, introduced a bill and got a lot of national infamy for introducing a bill that would do exactly that last year. And my best understanding is that most of the people in the legislature are aware that they shouldn't be pushing the envelope at this point. Some people can't help themselves. And so I think we will see bills expanding the definition of abortion to include emergency contraception, probably, so so they're kind of making it illegal by changing the definition of abortion to include it. Efforts like that are more stealth than bold ideas, probably until because they're afraid of the voters on those issues. Jen, do you know anything more?
No, just our friend Mary Elizabeth Coleman she's very interested in getting her name in the paper, and this is her thing, so we can always count on her.
All right, Nancy, you've got your hand up.
Well, this is maybe a mini soapbox, but this is the way I felt about Clean Missouri being reversed with Unclean Missouri. They tied up the summary for forever. I mean, they blew through all the dates to have this on the ballot. They went off the charts. And I was out giving presentations because people had scheduled them and nobody thought it would go that long. And I'm concerned that we kind of help their efforts at stalling things because we're not sharing information when we get closer. The fact is that once you start sending out your bill for or whatever petition for signatures, everything in that is carved in stone, because if you change it, you nullify all those signatures. So I think we should not, as a league, sit around until the summary is fixed. I gave presentations and I said, here's what the summary says. This $5 thing is going to go to zero. This $5 thing is going to go to zero. Do we really think there's a petition and that's what their priority was? No. Here's where they're what's further down on this summary list is where the meat is. And I just want us not to get bamboozled by them running out the clock. We know what's in the petition and we can speak to it.
Yes.
Yeah, and part of the thing here is you notice even here today, no organizations, no one's like officially behind these other than Missourians for Constitutional Freedom. And, there are a lot of politics behind that. Plus, no one wants to be officially behind something that doesn't happen because that could hamper future efforts. But it's certainly, the one thing I find frustrating, I will just speak for myself when I read the news, or, I hear, I might hear negative talk about these initiatives from either side, even our side, but there's no one really talking about where there's less talking about what they really do. There is an author named Bridget Dunlap who's in the state, and she writes some commentaries for the Independent, Missouri Independent, and she wrote one about what the initiatives really do, and really breaks it down in plain language that folks can understand. And in her article in the Independent, there's a link to her blog where she goes even more in depth. But so there's a resource there, and I'll try to pull that up and put it in the chat right now. But I think I agree. We need people talking about the abortion measures, and because they're coming someday, even if they don't come in 2024, the legislature is not going to fix this, and so it's going to have to happen someday. So we might as well have the conversations now.
I also think that we are going to have to deal with the issue of late term abortions, because that is our vulnerability. So the day before a woman gives birth, she can abort her child. Roe never said that. And, without some other factor like the woman's health, those late term abortions are not, they're not frivolous anyway. And I think we're going to have to address it to make this thing fly, because we're not going to have broad enough appeal without it.
That's true. The Secretary of State says late term abortions on demand are allowed under the measure, but the fact is they're illegal under federal law, except under very limited circumstances. So we couldn't change the Missouri Constitution to allow it, even if we wanted to.
We need to address it, though.
Yeah, it needs to be talked about up front.
Okay, another question. Is there some kind of database where we could check off the things we're interested in so it would be easier to collect signatures, more specific than general organizations? So
Is that a league question?
Yeah, I would interpret that question to say, if individuals want to sign up to help, where can they go and do that? Is there a spot on your website where they can volunteer?
On ours, I'm not exactly sure where that is. Pro-Choice Missouri, which just changed its name to
Abortion Access Missouri.
Abortion Access Missouri. Thank you. We just talked about it. They are they are developing a volunteer list. And the ACLU, where I don't know exactly where we are. Go ahead.
And we're waiting on results from a grant that we applied for from our national organization. So hopefully, fingers crossed, that will be up soon.
Okay, thank you. Laura?
I think ultimately we need to make voters aware too that this is simply another attack to limit their voice. And so I think the big picture of this is not just reproductive freedom, it's anything that the legislature wants to narrowly define for Missouri residents, that once again, it's tied back to what the initiative petition actually does for the citizens, which is to give them a voice against a very narrowly focused legislature. And all of the polls show that Missourians, in fact, are more than a majority in favor of so many things that our legislature wants to do away with for us. So I think it comes back to what Ann was saying at the beginning is it's still all about the vote and it's all about our voice. And I think this is one of the major issues that shows we're going to have our voice taken away if our vote is restricted, in whether it's in the form of the initiative petition or things not making it on the ballot at all. So I think that's just our big picture still needs to be about our voice and our vote.
Okay, another question. To get the measure on the November 2024 ballot, when do petitions need to be submitted? And second, once signatures are being collected, how can we find the petition to sign in case we miss the volunteers at the grocery store?
So it's May, I think it's May 5th of 2024. So that week is when the petitions would have to be submitted. And I will say this doesn't answer the question, but I think the place where we're going to be looking for volunteers the most is on checking signatures, because we want to make sure they're valid and we have enough valid signatures before they're submitted. And that helps prepare in case the Secretary of State predictably decides that there weren't enough valid signatures to have checked them beforehand, helps prepare for that little piece of litigation that'll have to happen. So the Missourians for Constitutional Freedom is the name of the campaign, and it will have a web page that has locations where people can sign and where people can sign up to volunteer.
So just to summarize a little bit, so you had mentioned Labor Day.
Yeah.
And that's the first one. So Labor Day is
3
in
weeks from now. Yeah.
September, right? Okay, so Labor Day is sort of when this timeline begins. You ideally,
Traditionally, yeah.
you would be collecting signatures in the spring of 2024, and so that's when we could find you people at the grocery stores, and then that effort would finish up in May when that would get submitted so that it could be put on the ballot. And then when you talk about checking signatures, what you're talking about is prior to May, of course. So in spring of 2024, and that's something that volunteers could do from home. They could you'll give them a sheaf of petitions and they will double check those names in a database and make sure that they're registered voters. And
make sure they're registered voters, make sure the address is right. Look for duplicates. Make sure there is a signature, errors like that.
Okay. Excellent. All right. Any other questions before we can wrap this up?
Yeah. Tony, what was the name of that organization again? You just stated, or the
the campaign will be Missourians for Constitutional Freedom.
That's it. Thank you.
And then
I did put a link in the chat to the I skipped the article and put you right to says Bridget Dunlop Substack. I'm not sure what Substack is, but it looks like a blog, and that's really the best explanation of what these initiatives are.
Okay, thank you. And then there's a question about what happens if there are errors, and I'm guessing that signature is not counted.
Right.
Final tally.
So we want to, we want to know where we stand and that we have a large enough buffer before submitting signatures.
And it's also really important to let your membership know to make sure that how they are registered to vote, because they will look for any excuse to get that signature off the ballot. So if I put in Jen Bernstein instead of Jennifer Bernstein, they're going to invalidate it. So, make sure that you're writing it specifically as it is on your voter registration.
Yeah. There's a lot of voter education to happen
right
at that stage too, before we even get to a campaign.
Right.
And that gives me a good opportunity to remind everybody to check their voter registration
Absolutely.
before every election, because we have to actively protect our voter registration now.
Yeah, you might have been booted from the rolls entirely. Never know.
Well, in the past, when I've done like petition work, like maybe it's because I'm close, but I had to go to an office, a storefront in St. Louis City, and there was a whole bunch of people, and they told me what to do, because when you turn in your signatures, you have to sign that and have it notarized. So there's a notary there. Yeah, so you'll be guided through all that.
For sure.
Well,
and there will have to be a large paid effort. Missouri's too big. The time is too short. Even without the delays, the time is too short. So there'll be can't do it without volunteers and can't do it without paid signature collectors. It will take both. Sorry.
Oh, no, not at all. Donna?
Well, the other point is, maybe it was made, but you have to be sure, like with Kansas City, Missouri Election Board and Jackson County, you've got to be sure you're signing the right election board area, or if I'm in Cass County, I have to sign one that is for Cass County. So there's education everywhere. But I have been following the Ohio vote and saw that presentation where and they had a lot of outside money, and that's always used as an excuse why they need this restrictions, because outside people are buying or making changes in our Constitution. But I love the commercial they did where the couple was in bed, and then there was the legislature, the representative overlooking and saying, I know what you should be doing, or whatever it was. But they also said there was a lot of misinformation down in the ads. And again, something we battle all the time.
Yeah, and actually, I'm gonna piggyback off of what you said and bring in something that Lisa said in the chat before we go to our next raised hand, which is that, our focus is voter rights and protection of voter rights. And so we will spend some more effort and more of our volunteer hours in working to protect the initiative petition this coming year. But Lisa's absolutely right. All these coalitions, all these organizations will come together, and we will be working together as much as possible. It will absolutely be a coordinated effort. And as Jen mentioned at the beginning of her piece of the program, one of our resources is the Missouri Voter Protection Coalition. And so there are leaders from just dozens and dozens of organizations that come together once a week and communicate. So we all have our specialty, and we can be more efficient, but we absolutely will all come together as well. So Mary Lindsay?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I don't believe that it's knowing the election board. I think it's just knowing the county, because I've done a lot of it even this year. And like on the front sheet of it, there are like 4 places where you have to write the county of where the the signatures, the people live who are giving their signatures, and so it's not as hard as knowing the election board, because I think, yeah, that's all.
Yeah, there's confusion commonly in Kansas City and in St. Louis, you know, with St. Louis City and St. Louis County, and people don't know which one they live in, that they're different. But it is curable.
Yeah, but I think it's the county.
Yeah.
Really, I mean, yeah, there's not even a place on it where it says election board, so.
Okay, well, I want to just thank our guests so much for coming. We've learned so much today about what's going on and how we can move forward. And, you know, I look forward to working with you. I wish we didn't have to, but
Don't want to go out of business.
yeah, but you guys are doing wonderful work, and
We love working with you, and thank you so much for including me today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. And we normally make announcements here, and I'm going to take just a minute because what I would like to do instead of make lots of announcements is steer you towards the e-voter. The e-voter came out on Tuesday, and it's got all kinds of things that are going on. There's some Women's Equality Week things going on. There's some league committee things going on. So please go to the e-voter, take a look at it, and that's going to serve as our announcement. I will, and then accept, Lisa's right, that I will announce that our next meeting will be actually a working meeting, and so watch for the upcoming e-voters to see more details about that. But those are the meetings where we come together, and the committees will have some tasks for you to do, and you can do them right then and feel satisfied and check that off your list. And so please watch the e-voter and go back and look at the old e-voter. If it's gotten lost in your email, you can find it on our website. We have a page that has all of the past issues of the e-voter, and it's pretty easy to get the most recent one. So just look for that on our website. So, all right. Thank you so much to our guests. Thank you to our audience and the wonderful questions, and to our members for all the work that you do. And I look forward to seeing the Kansas City people next month rather. So thank you very much.
Thank you for all you do.
Yes, ditto.